All right, welcome to the third hour of the Elias Makos Show. We begin by taking a look at what to do with IGA Stadium. Lots of talk about it getting a roof. Now, François Legault says that building a roof on IGA Stadium should be a priority for the city of Montreal. Legault making the comments during an interview during French coverage of the National Bank Open. It saw several delays last week due to wet weather, some matches finishing up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And let's take a look at this now with Stephanie Myles from OpenCourt.ca, the fantastic tennis website. Stephanie, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me again.
It is such a pleasure always to talk to you since we go ways back from our Expos days. So let's talk some tennis here. First thing, let me ask you this question. Your take, because you travel the world, you go to tennis tournaments everywhere. So in your opinion, should IGA Stadium have a roof?
It would be great if it did. It's not even, it's partially obviously the fans, who come to watch tennis. It's also, as I spent the last week working for TVA and doing all the on-court interviews and all that kind of stuff, it's also about television. You certainly put away a chunk of time to devote to tennis, and then if you have rain, well, that's a whole other thing. But it's just not. And yeah, you don't want players playing at 3 o'clock in the morning, but it's just not that easy for two reasons. I mean, the first thing is that it's not, not only do you need a roof, but you need a retractable roof. And you also need to try to build a roof on top of an already existing structure, like in essence, retrofitting it. So that's a huge expense for basically 1 week a year, even if the premier wants to argue, you could hold other events, or yes, of course you could, but it's a massive expense. And the thing is, every time it rains, then the whole, oh my God, the tournament needs a roof thing comes up, as if there's this really short memory, like this hasn't happened before. I mean, it happened yesterday in Cincinnati, which is the next stop, where most of the day was washed out. So they need a roof. But tennis is an outdoor sport, so you like to have a roof to safeguard. But the other thing about it is that people tend to focus on, my favorite got shafted by this. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that if you have a roof on one court, it's two things. The first thing is that the only people who really benefit from it are, let's say, the 4 matches that get played under the roof. And that means that the top-seeded, top-ranked players get another advantage. And the second thing is that unless you get to the semis and finals, in which case, obviously, it's better than no tennis at all, during the rest of the time, you might have, let's say, 30 matches scheduled for that day, and only 4 of them get played. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't solve the problem of getting the tournament finished on time. And it also, the players who do get to play under the roof still have to wait for their next match for someone who may have been rained out, who was scheduled on one of all the other courts that, didn't have play. So, it sounds great. And again, if François Legault wants to pay for it, well, out of our taxes, that's great. But I think it's more of a knee-jerk reaction to a very, very common occurrence in an outdoor sport, which is, rain.
And rain happens, but I think, people are talking about it because it rained so much last week, and it's like every 5 years where it rains the whole week. And I think it happened in 2016 in Montreal, and I was there in 2011 when it rained all week. So I've experienced it as a ticket buyer. I bought tickets for the entire week, and then it proceeded to rain for a whole week. They sent us a T-shirt, "I survived the Rogers Cup," because of all the rain they had that year. Stephanie, let me ask it to you this way, okay? So in the tennis world, you have the Grand Slams. Those are the biggest tournaments. They are required to have a roof. And then below the Grand Slams, you have the 1,000 series tournaments. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, of which Montreal and Toronto are one.
Okay, yeah. So of that series, this is how I'd like to, because I want to actually talk about how Montreal compares with the rest of the world. So when it comes to that level of tournament around the world, right, do other cities have retractable roofs? And so is Montreal major league in that respect, or are we just average or behind the pack when it comes to that level of tournament and the facilities?
Well, to answer your question, I don't know if a roof is actually required at the Grand Slams, but obviously there's so much money involved.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, up until a few years ago, Roland Garros did not have a roof, and they completely redid the main stadium at huge cost. And now they have one, and they're going to have a second one. And so, same for the other Grand Slams. Now, as far as the 1000s go, Indian Wells does not have any roofs. The weather there is generally pretty foolproof in the California desert in March, but it happens. Miami did not have any roofs. They still don't, because they build a stadium within the Miami Dolphins football stadium, so there's no roof there, and it rains a lot there. Mm-hmm. Madrid has 3 retractable roof stadium courts, and the atmosphere in those little boxes is terrible, but yes, they do. Rome does not. Monte Carlo does not. Let's see what else we got. Cincinnati, which is going on this week, does not. Mm-hmm. So no, the roofs at the Matches 1000 level are the exception rather than the rule. Now, one of the things that tournament director Valerie Tetro said, actually on Tibia over the weekend, was there was certainly a fair bit of conversation about having a roof in Montreal before the pandemic. And then when the pandemic happened, basically the Tennis Canada was pretty much bust. They were basically out of money and had so many financial problems that it really sort of faded into the background as a topic of conversation, because they had to try to get back on their feet again. So now, obviously, they've come back a long way towards that. But again, I say it can't just be a roof. It's got to be a retractable roof, and it's got to be retrofitted onto an already existing stadium. And they have to figure out a way to do it, because they can't just cancel the tournament for a year while they put this roof on. So they have to figure out how to do that as well, and they have to figure out where the money's going to come from. Yeah. So I don't see it happening in the near future, but as she pointed out, at some point, it may well be mandatory for a Matches 1000 to have at least one court with a roof, and at that point, they'll have a lot less wiggle room.
Stephanie, last question goes a little bit broader, right? I'd love your perspective, because you've spent so much time covering sports in this city. Olympic Stadium and the Expos, that was not a facility that was up to standards. I look at the facilities we have right now. Stade Saputo, many would argue, is not as good or anywhere near the stadiums they're building in the rest of the MLS. Molson Stadium for the Alouettes, it doesn't even have seating. It's like benches, right? Some would say it's substandard facility. Some people point to IGA Stadium, which, used to be a baseball stadium, was retrofitted. It's serviceable, but not top notch. Do you think we have a problem in Montreal with our professional sports facilities, and should we maybe invest more in them?
Well, I would agree with pretty much all of your points, although I would say that they spent a significant amount of money at IGA Stadium. I mean, it started off as a baseball stadium, and technically the press box was still the original press box, but it's completely redone. So it's basically kind of a new stadium, and it's a terrific place to watch tennis, actually. The seating is very good. The gradients are, everything about that is absolutely fine. So I put that one aside. Generally speaking, we come back to the same argument, and you remember, Elias, from when we were talking about keeping the Expos in Montreal, and ultimately how much it would cost to build a new facility to allow a for-profit enterprise or a rich owner or a tennis federation to make more money. So we seem to have something against, putting our tax dollars towards sporting facilities that profit mostly other people. And I mean, even the Bell Center was built privately, if I'm not mistaken, by the Canadians, right?
It was.
Yeah. So should we? As a sports lover, as a sports fan, yeah, that would be great if they all played in state-of-the-art facilities. Practically speaking, should it be a priority? I'm a little less. I would rather have shorter waiting times in the ER and all the other things that they say they spend their money on, if indeed they do that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if our civic pride or reputation would necessarily be enhanced by having great sports facilities, because in the end, you could certainly argue that nobody's going to really come to town to see the new ballpark, but they're going to come to town to see a really good team. So I think we need to focus on having championship teams in all areas, and then at that point, it really doesn't matter what they play in.
Stephanie, we're going to have to leave it there. I encourage all of our listeners to head over to OpenCourt.ca to read your words.